Hi, my name is Sean Walker. I'm a Principal Product Success Architect here at ServiceNow. Today I'm going to be talking to you about ways to create internal software product lifecycles. So here's what we're going to talk about in today's video. We are going to talk about what software product lifecycles are, how to improve software lifecycle data, and we're going to talk about creating internal software product lifecycles yourself, and then talk about software lifecycle averages. And then I'm going to kick into a quick demo to show you how they work within the instance. So what today's video isn't going to do is it's not going to cover the reporting on software lifecycles or kind of the other components of the content-based lifecycles. This is about how to create your own internal lifecycles to cover your business needs. So what are software product lifecycles? So lifecycles provide the ability to track critical software dates and risk levels. There are 6 lifecycles which ServiceNow helps our customers track, and those are pre-release, general availability, upgrade, end of life, end of support, and end of extended support. So these publisher lifecycle dates or data is made available to our customers through the content service library. But as I mentioned earlier, in addition, customers can create their own internal lifecycle dates. And we're going to talk about that a bit later. So one important thing for every customer to know is not all software models have lifecycle data. So that's really important for everyone to know, that publishers often don't release that information or don't release all the lifecycle phase dates when products become generally available. Some don't release it at all. So our content team does their absolute best to try and capture the most lifecycle content they can from the various sources out there and from the publishers themselves. But publishers don't always publish this information, and they definitely don't publish it all the time. So for example, when Microsoft releases their new version of Office, they may release a pre-release date or general availability date, but they often don't know how long they're going to support this product for until they've been in it for a little while, until they get further down, the new product development life cycle. So they don't release the end of support or the end of life dates right away. So that can cause some issues for some customers. There are several ways that you can make sure that you have better lifecycle data in your instance, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So the first thing, as we covered in our other video on lifecycle, is to make sure that all of your discovery models are fully normalized. And that's really important for matching your discovery models against our content library of lifecycle data. So when the scheduled job runs to populate the content-based lifecycle data, it's going to be looking at the normalized publisher, normalized product, and normalized version. And that's what it uses to match. So if your discovery models aren't fully normalized, you're not going to get good results matching and bringing in lifecycle data based off of our content. And then what we're going to cover today in our demo and a couple more slides here is creating internal software lifecycles. So customers might want to create and use the lifecycle feature to be able to track the specific dates for their software and based upon their company's policies around software usage and software support. There's also another way to create your own internal lifecycles called software lifecycle averages. And that, again, will allow ServiceNow to kind of create some automatic average dates for you. And then finally, that we will not cover in the video today, is there's a brand new feature that's out in Washington called Approximate Lifecycles By. So this you need to enable. There's this new system property that came out in Washington to allow you to use this feature. And currently, the reason we're not going to demo it today is currently the content isn't yet updated for that particular feature. It should be available very shortly. But at the time of this recording, we don't really have any data for that to demonstrate that approximate lifecycle feature in use. Okay, so creating internal software product lifecycles. So SAM managers may choose to create their own internal lifecycles to track and manage the installations of the software within their environment. They may choose to do this in order to provide their own lifecycle data that's going to adhere to their company policy on software usage. Or they may have custom software in their environment and they need to manually create this lifecycle information so that they can track it within their instance. So every company is going to have different requirements for what they need for lifecycle data. So this is one way that you can supplement the content-based lifecycle information with your own internal lifecycles. It's very quick and easy to create a lifecycle, and we'll walk through that in the demo. The next way to create some lifecycle data is by using software lifecycle averages. And that allows the SAM manager to create an average that can be used globally for all products and publishers, or averages that are very specific to a product or very specific to a publisher. So these averages are created automatically by ServiceNow using the general availability date of the software product. So once these averages have been created, there's a scheduled job that runs weekly called create calculated software lifecycles. And that's what does the matching and looks for the general availability date, compares it against the averages, and then creates those automatic lifecycle information for you. One thing to really note, though, is this job can take a long time to run because it's going to be processing through all of your software content data. So you do want to make sure you're not running this on a regular basis or through peak production hours, because it will take a long time, and that's why it's set to run weekly on the weekends. And the one other piece that you're going to want to make sure when you're ready to move forward with calculated life cycles is there's a system property called COM SNC SAMP generate calculated life cycles. And by default, that's going to be set to false. So if you want to use calculated life cycles, you're going to need to go to the system properties and set that property to true. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into a Washington, D.C. release of ServiceNow and overview these features I just talked about. Okay, so now I'm logged into a ServiceNow instance, a Washington instance with software asset management installed, and I'm going to take you through the process of creating an internal lifecycle for a software model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to the software asset workspace and come down into license operations. And in license operations, I'm going to go into my software models. So now in this instance, I have some custom software, and I want to be able to create lifecycle data to associate with that custom software so that I can track how long these particular software models should be supported within our instance. So we can see here we've got 4 different versions of this product success app, version 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in and put some lifecycle content around this. So I'm going to go into the first app, so the product success app 1, and you'll notice that there are no lifecycle information for this particular model, and that's because this is a custom product. This data is not going to be in the content library because it's custom and unique to my environment. So I'm going to want to go and put in some very specific lifecycle information. So we can come in and click on the new button and create a new lifecycle. So we're going to say publisher. It's a publisher lifecycle. We're going to put in the general availability lifecycle. The version's 1. There is no edition. There's no full version, but we want to specify a phase start date. So when did this particular version become generally available? So let's back this up a few years here, and let's say we can say this was first released in 2010. Version 1 was released in 2010. And we'll go with April 1st, 2010. That's when the very first release of version 1 was put out there. So we're going to go ahead. We can specify a risk level. So say maybe there was a vulnerability or something that somebody found with version 1, and version 2 is they fixed in version 2, and it was a pretty high risk. So somebody didn't do something properly when they created that application. So we can actually give it a risk rating and say, okay, this is very high risk rating. So what's going to happen is when it shows up on your dashboards and your reports, you're going to see your risk level associated with that. You can give a general description if you want, a generally available date, and then save this. So now when we take a look at our life cycles, we can now see that we've got a life cycle for general availability is the phase. It's a life cycle type is a publisher, and the source is internal. So if the source is coming from our content library, it's going to say the source will be ServiceNow. And then we can also see our phase start date. So now I'm going to go through and put in another general availability date for version 2. And we're going to say this one became generally available. The last one was 2010. So let's say we did it 2 years later. So we'll go 2012, April 1st again. And we're going to say this was generally available. And we're going to say the risk is just moderate because there's no security issues with this particular release. Again, a comment. Okay, and hit save. So now I can see that I've got, close the wrong one. I can now see that I've got a life cycle associated here, general availability, start date of 2012. Again, the source is internal. And you can also see, if you want to see the product life cycles for all the versions, you see there's 2 here, and it's going to show us the general availability dates for version 1 and version 2 in this life cycles for all versions. Okay, so now I'm going to be taking you through how to create a software lifecycle average. So I've got some products I know in my instance that only have generally available dates. So if I take a look at any of these Autodesk products, any one of the 2014 products, and I come to the software product life cycles, I can see that there's only a generally available date for these. And I want to make sure that we have end-of-life information for all of our Autodesk products, because we have a policy in place within our company that we only keep these in use within our instance for, let's say, 2 years. And after that, we switch to a newer version. So the way I can set up end of life and end of support dates for any of the Autodesk products is by setting up a software lifecycle average. So within the workspace, within license operations, I can go to software lifecycle averages. And from here, what I can do is I can actually create a new average. And so what this is going to do is it's going to take a look and automatically set those dates for me. So I have different types of averages I can do. I can do a custom industry average, and this would apply to all software models within our instance. So we don't necessarily want that. What we're going to want to do is we could do a product based, but then I'd have to set up life cycle averages for each one of those 3. But we know as a company, all of our Autodesk products, we go end of life after 2 years. So I'm going to make a publisher based life cycle. And what's that publisher? That publisher is Autodesk. And the average period's end of life is 24 months, because we only keep our products in use for 24 months. And we're going to say we stop supporting them after 48 months. And so what's going to happen now, I'm going to be able to save this, and it's actually going to go through and run a scheduled job to automatically create these dates for me. One of the other really important things if you're just starting to set up averages within your instance is you have to make sure that your instance is set up for, the sys property is set up to allow automatically calculated averages. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to update that system property so the averages will calculate. So if I come into the filter navigator, go to my sys properties list, and I search for Lifecycle, I should be able to find the property. So yes, here it is here. So com SNC SAMP generate calculated life cycles, and you can see right now it's set to false. So I'm going to want to set this to true so that when the scheduled job runs, that the average life cycles will be calculated. Otherwise, it'll just ignore when the scheduled job runs. It will just ignore it since it's set to false. So again, we're going to set this to true. Click on update. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the scheduled jobs. And I am going to find the job that runs the calculated life cycles. So we come through here. And here it is, let's create life cycles for suites. Here it is here, SAM create calculated software life cycles. And so this is a weekly job because it does take a very, very long time to run. So I don't recommend running this in your production instances, during your business hours. It's better to let it run on its scheduled basis on a weekly basis. But since for the interest of this video and I'm in my own personal interest, I'm going to go ahead and kick this job off now. Then we're going to pause the video and come back and show you those calculated life cycles after it's been run. Okay, so the SAM create calculated software life cycles job is completed. And as I mentioned, it does take a while to run. So we can see this one took about 3 hours to run. The more averages that you have configured in the system, the longer this job is going to take. So now that the job is complete, I'm going to show you what the calculated life cycles look like. So I'm going to go back into the software asset workspace, come back to my license operations, going to view the software models, and again, I'm going to filter based on those Autodesk software models that we set up the calculator. So here they are here. We've got these Revit 2014 raster and Plant 3D, right? So we set up a publisher specific life cycle, average life cycle for these. And we're going to come into the first one here and we'll take a look. And now there are 3 product life cycles. So if you remember from earlier, the only thing that was in our content library was this generally available life cycle. So you can see type is publisher, the source is ServiceNow, but it didn't have those end of life and end of support. So we created that average and we put that in end of life. We can see here that it's an internal life cycle type and it's a calculated life cycle. And it was based off of the end of life took into effect 2 years after the generally available date. So you can see here, there's 2 years difference. And then end of support, I think we had said was 48 months. So that's 4 years. So we can see here that that's 2 years or 4 years after the generally available date. So again, we can take a look at the other ones. It's done the same thing. And here we go. Again, calculated life cycles, 2 years, 2 years. And so that's how you create a life cycle average so you can use it internally for your own purposes. And the other thing that happens once you've created these life cycles and the daily job has been run to generate the life cycle report is you can actually start viewing some of any installations for these products that don't adhere to these life cycles. So again, if you remember from an earlier video, you can go to the asset overview, and right here there's a report on the dashboard that shows you the actual products in your environment that meet these criteria. So if we take a look at end of life, right? We don't see the products here, the 2014 versions here, but that's because if we look, right, this end of life period has already passed, right? It's 2015 and we're already into the next life cycle phase, which started in 2017, and there's no phases after that. So if there's any installations out there in our environment today, they would be in the end of support phase. So I'm going to go back to my overview, go back and take a look at the end, what's in the end of support. And I see here there's an Autodesk. So let me show all the Autodesk products. And here we go here. We can see we've got some installations in our instance. So one installation of each one for the versions 2014, in this case 2015, in our environment. And I can dig into those and see what those installations are, etc. And then take the appropriate remediation steps. To recap what we covered on today's video, we discussed how to improve software product lifecycle data. We demonstrated manually creating internal product lifecycles and enabled and created the software lifecycle averages. For more information on this topic, you can go to the ServiceNow product documentation site and search for end of life and end of support lifecycles, and create averages for product life cycles in the workspace. I hope you found this video helpful. I look forward to talking to you in the next one. Thanks.